Bună seara și bine ați venit la o nouă întâlnire din seria Doer Talks. Așa cum am promis și săptămâna aceasta, vin către voi cu un subiect foarte interesant, un subiect pe care de foarte multă vreme voiam să-l discut și să-l aduc în fața voastră, pentru că prietenii mei de la Într-o mi-au prezentat un anumit tip de suplimente în urmă cu ceva vreme, care nu doar că mi-au captat atenția, dar pe care am început să le iau și care mi s-au părut foarte faine. Vorbesc despre brandul Living Nutrition, un brand foarte special de suplimente, pentru că modul în care ele sunt formulate este foarte diferit de ceea ce am mai cunoscut până acum. Nu o să vă ofer eu foarte multe informații despre aceste suplimente, pentru că nu eu sunt cea care trebuie să ofer informațiile, ci care trebuie să le obțină de la invitatul meu din această seară. În schimb, eu vă invit pe voi, ca de obicei, să ne lăsați un like, să ne lăsați un comentariu, să dați share acestui interviu și să-l salvați în cazul în care doriți să-l revedeți ceva mai târziu. Așadar, fără prea multe povești, dați-mi voie să îl introduc pe invitatul meu. So, good evening, Graham Botfield. You are tonight my guest for Doer Talks. It's a series that I'm hosting almost weekly, and it's a very good opportunity to talk to specialists about very interesting things regarding health and what in all aspects of health, holistic, let's say. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm really excited, and really thank you so much for inviting me for this talk.
So, Graham, you are the founder of this amazing supplement brand, Living Nutrition. But before diving into the brand and into the secrets, let's say, behind the brand, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about your experience as a therapist, as a nutritional therapist. What does it mean to be a nutritional therapist?
Well, I would say most nutritional therapists come from a wide variety of backgrounds. They really do. Many have their own health journeys that they bring into the profession. That's not really the case for myself. And once they've done their studies, which tend to be about a 3-year block, then they diversify into either specialist areas or whatever areas they're attracted to. Me, myself, I studied from a very much a science-based background, so I have a good platform to be able to understand the research and understanding the body and many conditions. But personally, I moved into being much more of a naturopath. I enjoyed working with plants, much more with plant medicine, and where my journey took me is appreciating the more traditional, deep-rooted ways of working with medicines, particularly Ayurvedic principles, traditional Chinese medicine, shamanic medicines. This really interests me. And what I'm really seeing now is that the modern day conditions, particularly the chronic conditions that we're exposed to, autoimmune conditions, inflammatory conditions, that the ancient practices are absolutely ideal in how they understood health, how they understood medicines, and what this provides, much more than individual nutrients, individual this. And I would say it's very much a back-to-back view on health. We don't view health, or naturopaths don't necessarily view health that health begins where the body starts and it finishes where the body ends. There's much more to health, and there's much more to individual nutrients. And it's really exciting, I think, in the research that is now coming out supporting these ancient traditions.
It's great that we have this scientific support, because it's something quite new, and usually people are saying, okay, I'm going to go to traditional medicine because this is the one that has the studies. And in our country, we have a country with a very large history in plants. And people like my grandmother and my grandmother used to have them all the time in the house and use them. But there were no scientific studies, and people were saying, you don't know what it can cause. So now we have the studies,
Yes.
which is amazing. And we're going back to the roots, actually.
Yes, ideal. There's I guess, a dichotomy or a separation of where I get, I guess, drawn into this is you've got this, the medicine body, and this is the nutritional fraternity as well. It has to be evidence-based medicine, which is great, and it gives you that understanding and it gives you a very solid basis. But with that, it does, to a degree, give you a separation from appreciating your body intuitively, being intuitive rather than trusting a study or someone externally, then you're able to trust yourself. And you're able to really appreciate medicines where traditionally, if I was going to be doing my studies 100, 200 years ago, it would be an apprenticeship. I would be getting familiar with the plants rather than looking at the individual elements. So there needs to be an appreciation on both sides rather than it just being evidence-based and losing that intuition and that relationship with medicines. But also, you can't just have one person's appreciation with that without understanding really the mechanisms of how that works. So it would be great if both sides could work together.
Yeah. I suppose this will be in the near future happening as well.
It would be wonderful.
Indeed. So your intuition and your love for plants and your curiosity for plants, and of course the school that you've studied at, made you found this company in 2014, the Living Nutrition.
Yes.
What were you thinking about when you wanted to start it?
One is, I didn't want to be a Me Too company. I wanted to bring something new into the industry, and there's an area that I think has been missing from supplementation forever, and that is working with plants, bringing the synergy of plants and potentiating the whole plant, rather than the approach that we have currently is that more has to be better. So if you're taking this term a therapeutic dose, then you'd be taking more of something to have this therapeutic outcome. And the naturopath way, the traditional way, it was never about the amount, it was always about the form. So when they were working with herbs such as turmeric, it wasn't a matter of separating some of the compounds such as curcumin and giving that high dosages, because the body really struggles to work with high dosages coming into the body. Shaman and traditional medicine men would be taking turmeric and they would be creating a form of turmeric that would be the medicine. And that, I think that philosophy, that approach was missing. That in the form of medicines has been missing. So I'm bringing to the market our deep-rooted traditions through fermentation and what fermentation offers with Living Nutrition, by combining the very best gold standards of fermentation, which would be kefir or kefir grains. We work with water kefir grains, so everything is plant-based, and with a kombucha SCOBY. Working with developing these to their potential and then combining these ferments with our herbs, watching, measuring and seeing how the plant would change holistically rather than just separating and concentrating. So a different approach, I think, has been missing from supplementation, because naturopaths have always had an uneasy relationship with supplements. If we believe in food and we work with food, then is there a need for supplementation, and does food offer enough? And you have this point of moving from preventing disease by using food into being able to cure or reverse conditions where food may not be strong enough, where fermentation comes in, or this way of potentiating food now potentially is strong enough to reverse the conditions that food alone in preventing disease isn't strong enough to reverse it.
How does this fermentation work?
Well, there's various stages to it. So fermentation, offers a number of benefits, and it begins by taking the plant and the microbes within the fermentation. And this is why you need such a wide biodiversity of microbes, because each microbe family will do its part in the fermentation journey. So the first step is it makes the nutrients far more bioavailable. It's from their fibrous bindings that they have with all plants. They're in what's regarded as a glucoside form, which is safe, and it means that it's stable, but it's not very well absorbed. The first thing they do is make them unstable, if you like, but much more absorbable. So now you have an array of nutrients that we can absorb much better, but they're also in a state that they are ready to then change into other forms. And these other forms is where it gets really interesting and what we're recognizing with their medicinal effects. So most plants, well, all plants will have within them their active ingredients are the polyphenols or the bioflavonoids. These compounds that are highly active, and they have a variety of roles in their body. On their own, they tend to have isolated actions, such as curcumin in turmeric is very effective in reducing inflammation. Absolutely. When you're fermenting turmeric, these curcumins, which are not very bioavailable, this is why we need different mechanisms to try and get them into the body. They become bioavailable without the need of using microlysation, nanotechnology, black pepper, name it, to make them better absorbed. They are now in an absorbable form, but also with these curcumins, you are creating these metabolites. These metabolites are breakdowns and restructuring of the curcumin. Now you have an array of compounds that are still very, very effective in reducing inflammation, but together they're able to work on many more pathways within the body, because the body is very complex, particularly with the immune system. So now you're able to work on many more areas, many more mechanisms, so you can reduce inflammation even further. And you're able to re-regulate inflammation. So where you get stuck in an inflammatory condition where there's always inflammation, and curcumin is very good in reducing it, so you always need to take curcumin to help with this inflammatory condition you have. You now have the potential, and we're proving this with our own research, of re-regulating, recommunicating the immune system within the body. And it's all about the communication within our body. We're able to re-regulate these conditions with the potential of having greater effect in the symptoms, but actually reversing the body back to the happy, healthy state that it should be. And that's just one example of how these herbs work. It gets far more interesting than that when we delve a little bit deeper.
Does it work with any plant that you've did it work with any plant that you've tried it?
Yes, it does. When we first recognized this is it comes from the French paradox. If you've heard of this before, the French paradox is why the French lived to be very healthy, in very good condition, right into old age. And they were looking at the diet that they had. And we always look at the diets of groups of people. And they found that their diet of cheeses and red wine provided these nutrients through fermenting dairy into cheeses, grapes into red wine. And they found that red wine particularly was interesting, that grapes through fermentation would be creating this compound called resveratrol. And resveratrol, many people are familiar with. You can buy supplements of just resveratrol. Has this very amazing anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-aging capacity that works as a polyphenol inside the cell, and it works much deeper and is able to have far more actions. And that's just one example of a polyphenol when it is fermented into a highly active form. And yes, you can take this concept into every herb, every food. And one way I try and explain it so people can appreciate the difference of the base food in its fermented form is that you'll be familiar with in Romania with kefir or kefir.
Yes, of course.
You take milk, which has no real taste. It has no real therapeutic value. You can ferment it into yogurt and it becomes tastier and more healthy. But if you use the biodiversity of microbes and ferment it for far longer into more of a therapeutic fermentation, you can now take milk into kefir. The taste, the value, the therapeutic value of kefir is far, far stronger. And now you have something that has a completely different value from its original form, because you could drink a gallon of milk. You're never going to get the benefit of one small cup of kefir.
Of kefir.
And if you take that concept into herbs, which all traditional practices did, it was the form that was in a completely different therapeutic energy than the original substrate. And we know we have problems with turmeric, with spices, with all herbs, including, I think, the more popular one now, ashwagandha. Its true medicinal name was ashwagandha arista or asavar, and this was the fermented form. They would add in asavar at the end of ashwagandha to demonstrate that this was the medicine. This was the fermented form of ashwagandha, rather than just ashwagandha itself, which was a food, a plant, and preventative, but it wasn't seen as a medicine in its base root form, because roots are problematic to get a lot of nutrients from, and roots that we're familiar with, turmeric, rhodiola, ashwagandha, red ginsengs, the ginsengs, highly potent, but really in their fermented forms.
And how do you get the ingredients? Because you have 3 or 4 different kinds of ingredients. You have the herbs, you have the mushrooms, you have the blends, which means that there are more herbs and inside, and there are also the roots, the roots.
Sure, I'll explain the process, Sonia.
Yes, please, because they are different. They come from different parts of the earth and of the soil.
Yes, and I think firstly we value the plants that we work with, and every plant enjoys different fermentation processes and it enjoys different environments. All plants do. So roots ferment very easily. The leaves we need to be more delicate with because they are more delicate part of that plant. So we do work with all parts, and each plant has different potentials and different energies and different values. So what is always the same is we've developed over the 10 years what we believe is the strongest possible kefir grains, and with the kombucha SCOBY, with the biodiversity of microbes, and we create a juice from that. And with this, we add in a very small amount of sugar just to start it, and that is gone very, very quickly. And we add in really just teas, green teas, black teas, otherwise, as you would get with a kombucha drink.
Kombucha drink, yeah.
And we do something similar, a little bit of tweaking with the water kefir grains, and we will grow that juice for 6 days, typically 6 days. We're monitoring it, we're looking at the activity. So now you have this highly active juice, both kefir and with kombucha. Then with the herbs, we will powder the herbs because we want to get the maximum surface area. So we will be working with turmeric, for example. That powder we would then that root we would grind into a powder. And then we in both the kombucha drink and the kombucha and SCOBY drink. And then with that, everything is done in small batches. We will ferment for, and this depends on what the herb needs. So we will add in more if it needs more, and we would ferment for longer. So now we have this fermentation going on, which we're monitoring daily for the acidity, the pH. We're looking at the microbes, make sure that there's no spoilage and everything is going well. And that can be anything from 6 days to 2 weeks fermentation. At the end of that, when everything is optimized, then we put that into our freeze dryer. We're very careful with the temperature monitoring. So we reduce it to -20 degrees and we heat that up to nothing more than 20 degrees. So room temperature. So everything is raw. All of the microbes are maintained. Every product has a probiotic. All of the enzymes are maintained. All of these delicate compounds are maintained. We don't need to introduce any excipients otherwise, because it is shelf stable from that moment of finishing the freeze dryer for 3 years. And it is nothing but food. Nothing is ever added. We never do that. We never would. These are my babies. I'm not going to ever weaken their potential. And you have the most concentrated, nutrient-rich, with the array of nutrients that you would ever find on planet Earth. And it's something we're hugely proud of. The whole process will take up to a month, but the beauty when you're working with nature, you can't cut corners if you're going to do it right. So
in synergy with nature, as you well say.
This is it, and it's quite wonderful. We have an open house policy. I don't hide anything that we're doing. We want to be transparent. We want to share. We invite anyone to come and visit us.
I'll come to visit you.
Please do. You'd be more than welcome. We'd roll out the red carpet. We'll show you what we're fermenting. Some are just the aroma, the taste is something that you would never experience in any other.
I'm sure.
And we want to just showcase what we're doing.
But tell me, please, you have all these plants from different parts of the world. How do you get the ingredients? Because it's not easy to get them and to make sure that they are the quality that you need.
No, this is absolutely right. Well, our absolute is we only work with organic plants, and we work with sustainable sources as well. And this is part of our DNA and our criteria. So we work with very good companies, not the farms themselves, although there is a wonderful community farm in Canada that grows the very best organic rhodiola that we've ever come across. So if we can work with the farms, we will. If we can get biodynamic ingredients, we will. But we work through groups that will bring in and will certify that at the very minimum, they are wild crafted, organically grown, sustainable, and they're working with the farmers. I inspect every ingredient that comes in because you can get a wide difference, even if it's organic. I've had organic samples come to me, and the quality, the taste, you know straight away. And this is a familiarity with the taste, with the smell, just looking at it, you know how fresh it is, and you know the quality. So that's my job, and that's my joy of with these plants.
Regarding the example that you offered earlier in our talk with turmeric and curcumin, you said that the fermentation has the power even to make the plant so powerful that it can reverse the inflammatory process, let's say. How long does it take for the supplement to have an action in the body, to feel active in the body?
Absolutely. It's probably the hardest question that I often hear to be able to answer, because everyone is different and their conditions are different. So I would say ours work typically for symptoms that come on quickly. We notice that they can be alleviated within days. I've just had a testimonial from someone who's been using our fermented lion's mane, who had a neuralgic condition for 20 years and had been on medication every day for 20 years. And within days, her symptoms subsided. Within 10 days, I think it was, she's completely off her medication and now not experience any of the neuralgic symptoms, which is amazing. But it depends on many factors. It depends on whether it's an autoimmune condition that has come on for 10 years. A naturopathic approach tends to be every year you've had a condition, it takes a month to reverse it. So it can take some months. We've done pilot studies on Crohn's disease and colitis, and we have good testimonials with that, with our symbiotic. And it's probably the one product I'm most passionate about, because I believe everyone should be taking this symbiotic, that within 4 months with a testimonial, we've got a colonoscopy image of someone who's about to go to have an operation, completely inflamed, no gut flora, in a lot of pain. 4 months, another colonoscopy, absolutely clear, completely reversed, and not needing surgery at all. And our pilot study of taking our symbiotic, 6 months tends to be the able to reverse these conditions. What we don't know yet, because these are pilot studies, on whether this condition is permanently reversed, but what we know with the mechanisms of action and how these conditions manifest, this is arguably the best approach in the compounds that are produced in being able to stabilize, reverse a condition that is reliant on a healthy gut flora, on healthy tissue, and on the immune system being re-regulated. And if you try and pick one particular compound or action, you will never be able to succeed. These are holistic whole body conditions that have to be dealt with holistically in terms of the approach.
You've said symbiotics, and I'm just looking at the Living Nutrition page, and I will kindly ask you to explain a little bit more about what symbiotics are, because when I'm looking at the page of Living Culture Symbiotics, I can see here like this. I can see fermented symbiotic, I can see flora sensitive, I can see flora tranquil, I can see flora terrain, regenesis, and family, and gold spice. What is the difference between these?
It's a great question, thank you. And I do think we need to do a better job of communicating this. We're very product centric, and we need to be.
I asked because I was one of the clients, let's say, of Botanic, and I need to choose some prebiotics, and I looked at the page and I said, okay, they all look nice, they all look like I need them, but I suppose I cannot take all of them. I don't need all of them.
No, you absolutely don't. So we have the standard symbiotic, which is this product here, and it's just called the symbiotic. And this is a fermented soy, and all of the products contain this fermented soy. The other products, apart from the standard symbiotic, we introduce other herbs for specific conditions. So with the sensitive, which is designed for IBS, we add in peppermint to help to soothe, and we add in lemon balm, which really helps with the gut-brain axis for the stress that's associated with IBS. So we add in herbs depending on the condition, but the core product and the core benefit of this comes from the symbiotic, and we've only just launched the symbiotic. The reason that we've just launched it is we needed to be absolutely sure, because we know we're going to get some interesting rebuff from probiotic companies in terms of how many CFUs it has, i.e. how many live cultures are in there every time, because we're working with nature, and it's very difficult to determine with every batch you're going to get exactly the same. So what we can guarantee is that with the symbiotic, we have 30 billion live cultures. Where it gets really interesting, we're using live cultures from nature. We're using live cultures from kefir and kombucha. These are not lab evolved cultures. So these are very natural. These are much more sturdier, and these are food-based cultures. Where we have a point of difference that there's no product in the world that compares to this is we have 120 different species, all coming from nature. And this 120 different species provides this biodiversity, which is the closest blueprint to your natural gut flora, rather than just one culture, 3 cultures, 10 cultures, which doesn't necessarily represent what you need in creating that balance again. So the 120 species is very important for the biodiversity and mapping your natural gut flora. But where its most critical benefits, and why we describe this as a symbiotic by the symbiosis that it provides, is it's a food-based one. And the fermented soy, we sprout the soy. We only use organic, non-GMO soy because soy can be a problem with the sources now. We sprout it first. All beans should be sprouted. So we sprout it until it has a tail. So now we know that it's a live, healthy soybean. And then we will blend that, and we will then ferment it. And similar to milk, when you ferment soy, soy has very little taste, and it has an interesting nutrient profile. When it's fermented, this profile is absolutely activated into a very rich aroma, strong tasting food. And when you smell it, you can get this cheese-like aroma that you get from this fermented soy. What this is providing is it is stimulating the digestive processes and re-regulating every digestive aspect in your body. So now you have a food that is not only providing the probiotic microbes, you're providing the nutrients that will heal and support the tissue. It will re-regulate the digestive processes. It's very good at inducing the neurotransmitter serotonin in particular function in the digestive tract. So if you have constipation or diarrhea that's associated with IBS, it will re-regulate that, re-regulate stomach acid. It will re-regulate the gut-brain link and provides the compounds that are important that we do not get from any other source. One of those in particular, when you smell a symbiotic, when you open it up and you smell that lovely rich aroma that you get from kefir naturally that you never get from milk, this is butyric acid. The source of nutrition and energy to our colon, 70% of that needs to come from butyric acid. If we haven't got a source of butyric acid, we cannot have a healthy colon. So we can only get that through fermented foods that tend to be from the dairy or from the soy food groups. But the specific benefit of soy is it provides the proteins that you can get from dairy, but it provides the polyphenols that you cannot get from dairy, and you've got the phytoestrogens. So now you
just mentioned something I wanted to ask you about with the estrogen, because I do know that soy contains estrogen, and if women eat too much soy, they might get hormonal imbalances. How do you make sure that this does not happen?
Well, the simple thing is, let's go into this because there's a bit of a mixed appreciation and understanding of soy. There is. Soy should always be consumed in its fermented form, really. And that's how it always was. And that was the reason why we brought soy into the Western culture, is it was preventing hormonal conditions, menopausal conditions, cancers, and aging. And this was proven beyond a doubt, and the reason why we brought it over. But this was in the form of miso soup and their fermented foods. So fermented is important. The next thing is that do not take too much, because too much of anything, if you're trying to achieve balance, if you're weighting both ends of the scale, that is not balance. In fact, if we switched our appreciation from balancing hormones to harmonizing hormones, now we're working with the dynamics of the cycle that we work within on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, and within the day, these cycles that we need to be working with fermented soy. It is absolutely amazing in the right amounts, which you can never have too much unless you're taking 2 bottles a day to reach those.
Okay. we won't do that.
No, you don't. With our bodies, with our digestive system, with our hormonal systems, with our nervous systems, you never want to shout at your body. And this is the mistake that we have by saying more has to be better. If you're providing that message and these messaging nutrients, and estrogens are messaging nutrients because they work within the cell at a DNA level, this is why they can switch on and switch off cancer genes. Now you're just providing a regulating message to the body to help the body rebalance into this homeostasis, happy health state. And it's a harmonizing effect rather than a balancing effect if we're going to be true to our forever changing hormonal cycles. And the beauty when you're working on the digestive tract with the symbiotic is that we have 70% of our immune system in our digestive tract. We're able to produce every hormone in our digestive tract, and we've got every nerve ending in our digestive tract. So it is absolutely the perfect food in the right amount, in the fermented form, of how our ancestors, and particularly the Asian population, worked with soy, and that is what we've followed. So now you have a food that is 100% safe. You cannot get an allergic reaction from it because the proteins are broken down into peptides. The research that's been coming out over the last couple of years on soy peptides alone, on how it's working with colon cancer, is it's re-regulating every immunological marker that is associated with cancers in particular. So this was the way, it is the way, and it will be the way with how research is moving towards.
So actually nothing new, just we just go back, as we said, to the roots, and using the power of what nature gave us since the beginning. So if someone is looking for a good probiotic, the first choice could be the fermented symbiotic.
Yes, absolutely. And that would be the core. And I honestly believe everyone should be taking this every day as part of their supplement program. And then we have 6 products that are designed for specific digestive conditions. So I can run through those quickly if you wish.
Yes, please do so. Please do so. I was trying to choose at least 2 of them, but please run through all of them.
Yes, lovely. So the first one, and one that I think I'm most happiest about, is one called the Family. It's called the Family because everyone can take that, including babies. And we've added in baobab and banana, particularly banana for baobabs with the tryptophan to help with their sleep patterns. And these are very nutritious, safe foods, banana and baobab. So you can open up the capsule. The baby can have this. You can make a paste of it with some water on the teat so the baby could take it off the breast. You could add it into water, and it's a very pleasant tasting one, and it's safe in pregnancy, and one that all the family can take by the name. The sensitive that I mentioned with the peppermint and lemon balm, the sensitive for the sensitivity and particularly for IBS is why I designed this. It's a condition that I worked with a lot when I was practicing, and this is my background really. I used to lecture and research on digestive health and the gut flora, so this is why I'm so passionate about this particular product. And of course, with the symbiotic as well as the foundation of this, the benefit that provides for IBS is it's amazing in re-regulating the digestive processes that always get disrupted with IBS. And this is down to this serotonin link that we now recognize with IBS. The other ones, we have one called the Gold Spice. This has ginger and turmeric. Yes, the herbs in these aren't fermented. It means that we can keep the price down, and we're really providing the benefit of the herb rather than the fermented form. And this one is really for if you've got nausea, it can be useful. And the term that used to be used in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine is the Agni, the fire. If we lose that fire that we have in our gut, these 2 spices in low amounts are amazing in just getting that going again. Another one we have is Tranquil.
Yes.
And Tranquil is designed for gas and bloating. And you've got fennel and chamomile. So fennel helps to remove wind, and chamomile is very gently calming where you have the bloating and the pain of distension. Chamomile is a very good relaxant for bloating. So gas and bloating are a common reason why people would take a probiotic. You've got every product that helps with the symptoms. The 2 best-selling products in this range, we have Regenesis. Regenesis is designed, the name as the clue, is for post-antibiotics. And with the artichoke and chicory, you're engaging the liver with the bitters, and it helps to get rid of any toxicity that is remaining in the body after antibiotics. And it helps as well as flush out through a liver flush. It helps again to re-establish the gut flora and get everything working again very quickly. A very good one, a very strong product, the Regenesis. And that's the only one that I would have caution with medication because of its action on the liver. And our best-selling one, which...
The Terrain.
the terrain is a bit more expensive because the quality of ingredients, we've been very careful with the freeze-dried aloe vera powder and the slippery elm powder. And these are amazing nutrients on getting the terrain, the digestive lining, good and healthy again, because we have this mucous membrane that is our barrier, if you like, on inflammatory conditions and keeping things stable. But it's also the membrane that helps for the microbes to adhere to the gut lining, to stabilize, and for any inflammatory condition. With aloe vera is a wonderfully effective anti-inflammatory in its own right, and slippery elm for this mucous membrane. For people with skin conditions, definitely the terrain, and we've got, again, wonderful testimonials with this, eczema in particular, and again with babies and children, it works very well. And for conditions such as leaky gut, such as celiac condition, this would be the product to consider for these types of conditions. Yes.
Can two types of this kind of supplements can be mixed, can be taken at the same time? Do you recommend it?
You can, absolutely, and they work very well together. It's like, again, switching off from this, high dose approach, that how you would combine foods. Yes, you can. The more foods you combine, the better effects you can often have. And I would say with my products, if you take up to 6 a day, combine them however you wish, then you should, that is the point that maybe it begins to come a little bit strong. If you would know with kefir, is having a glass is fine, and you've got pretty much half a glass with every 2 supplements on this anyway, that when you've taken 6, then beyond that, then you may get, it might be a little bit overwhelming, and that's the last thing that I want to do. So mix and match as you wish. I personally, my regime is that I have the symbiotic every day, a fermented chaga mushroom, which is amazing. I have a product called the True Adaptogens. And the reason why I call it the True Adaptogens is adaptogens, which you're probably familiar with in preventing the body succumbing to the stresses that we're exposed to. The whole plant is the adaptogen. If you extract part of a plant, that plant is no longer an adaptogen. It's a targeted product. So we keep the herbs in there, which is holy basil, red ginseng, ashwagandha, and rhodiola. So that one I have every day. And I have one called Keflemex, which is a combination of turmeric, rosemary, reishi spores, and green tea.
Great, thank you for the tips. When is the best time to have the supplements?
Yes, I would say in the morning, as part of your breakfast regime. I would suggest always in the morning and the afternoon or early evening. Our bodies, we work with circadian rhythms, and within these circadian rhythms, we have what are called ultradian rhythms that regulate within this. And our immune system switches over from the morning and the evening. We produce different hormones, insulin as an example, cortisol as an example, and we have these. All of our compounds, and this is something important to recognize, we don't produce these just at one point in the day. They work biphasically. So we have a secondary response later on in the day. So if we take a supplement at the beginning of the day, perfect. If you take one on later on in the day, you're working with the clock as we work around our bodies. And that would be ideal if you want to re-regulate the body, particularly hormonally. Then, and we've just released a product called Woman, which is,
I've seen it. Seen it.
We're very excited about that with the fermented symbiotic and the Woman, which is fermented shatavari, ashwagandha, and holy basil. This, when we're working premenopausal women, the first critical thing that you need to think about before we're working with hot flushes or irregulation is get that balance right and get the body working in these cycles. If you get that done first, then you shouldn't, in many cases, experience the symptoms that then you're using herbs to work on the symptoms. And these 2 products are absolutely amazing in not getting the symptoms to need anything else. And those 2 side by side would be an amazing combination to take. But getting back to your point, really work with the body if you can in the morning, in the early
afternoon.
late afternoon, early evening would be the perfect time.
And are there any foods or drinks that might interfere with the action of the supplements, of the foods?
If you take them with very hot foods, if you're mixing with those, you can lose the enzymes and the microbes. If you're taking them, because all of these are in capsules, if you take those with a lukewarm drink or with anything, no, you're not going to cause any problems, and you're not really going to add in any benefits either, to be honest, because these are foods, these are whole foods, and they offer everything that you could want when you're looking at the ingredients in there. So they're very stable. Once you've opened up the jar, do look to consume it within a month and try not to get any moisture otherwise in there, but otherwise they're very stable. And have them with water, have them with food, but it's not critical.
I was thinking about maybe if you get the symbiotics in the morning, first time you wake up with some water, and then right away you have a coffee, if the coffee is somehow interfering with the action of the foods.
I've not known that to happen. I would say if you had it immediately with your coffee, you could lose some of the benefits because the coffee is acting as a stimulant. So some of the benefits that you could have with that. One product that I'm very interested in the oral microbiome. So it's interesting when you say that. We know that coffee and some of these stimulants do affect the oral microbiome. And so if you are opening up the capsule and using it to reintroduce a healthy oral microbiome, following it with coffee wouldn't necessarily be good, but this would be a time to take it after you've brushed your teeth. Otherwise, in fact, the next product I'm hoping to release is a chewable tablet to reintroduce a healthy oral microbiome anyway. So coffee may not be the best thing to take, not necessarily for the heat, but because it can have a stimulatory effect that is going against the benefits that you're looking to have with the supplement.
Because you've mentioned several times the IBS, the irritable bowel syndrome. It's something that happens a lot to a lot of people in the last years. As a nutritional therapist, what have you noticed? Why does this happen? Why did it appear?
Yes, it's a good question. And it's one of those conditions that there's, when you're diagnosing IBS, there's about 150 questions that you would answer to get that diagnosis back. So what it suggests is there's a lot going on and there's a lot of mechanisms at fault here. It's a condition that tends to come on over a period of time, and there's a number of key factors always to consider that leads into IBS and also to be able to come out of that. Now, you've got the digestive tract itself, which if you challenge that over many years with your diet, then it can become dysregulated and you can begin to get inflammation, and dysbiosis is always associated with IBS. So then you have, I guess, a breeding ground to be able to develop IBS. What is critical and always is this gut-brain link that we're beginning to recognize, and stress, where the stresses that we are under all the time, and you've got a dysregulated gut-brain axis that is nourished through a healthy microbiome and a lack of fermented foods, then that now is not optimized, that when you have the stresses, then all of a sudden where you have this pathway that you're not able to regulate and you're sending signals down to the digestive tract, that is this unregulated pathway. We don't have toll bridges otherwise to regulate the traffic, if you like. Then you get this immediate stimulus on a very weak and sensitive terrain with your digestive tract. So this is critical. There can be more to it on an individual basis, but food is, I guess, the trigger, and stress is the trigger. We know that. Then they're the two areas that you need to work on in recreating a healthy diet, which can take a while because people that I've worked with IBS, their food habits and what they can enjoy has usually been reduced significantly.
To almost nothing.
do almost nothing. So it's a gentle re-regulation. It is working on those stress pathways, but that key stress pathway is the gut-brain link. So this product, the symbiotic or the sensitive, is ideal in it doing its job, and then that is allowing the person to begin to expand their vocabulary of food and get back to that healthy state. But the pathway in this particular condition is the pathway out, and I do suggest working with a practitioner that has this experience. But we have now a product that is engaging with the senses. Now, 30% of digestion happens in the brain. It's the cephalic stage, 30%. So you just have to smell or think food. And this is why IBS has been an interesting condition to understand the digestive process, because you don't even need to put food in the mouth, and you can have IBS symptoms of going to the toilet straight away, because the serotonin link, we release serotonin and we have receptors in our at the end of the colon that are receiving that is initiating that. Now you have a food that is re-regulating the neurotransmitter pathways from one end to another, which is profound in being able to now get that function regulated and back again.
Thank you. Graham, I would also like to talk about mushrooms, because mushrooms are a very hot topic, I think. They are starting to grow in popularity because of the many benefits they have. Tell us a little bit more about mushrooms, please, about the power of mushrooms.
Yes, I would love to, and maybe a whole new talk on mushrooms.
It should be, yeah, I know.
I think that the two areas of nutrition that I'm most interested in is fermented herbs and mushrooms, because both of those side by side have the ability to communicate with the body at an intracellular DNA level on reversing some of the most amazing conditions. Mushrooms they've been described as biological response modulators. So what they do is, when there is anything that is going out of balance in the body, their action and function in the body is to re-regulate it, and this works right the way back down to a stem cell function. And so their role in nature, and I think with any plant, if you see how it functions and its purpose in nature, gives you an idea on how that's going to help the body. And there's some wonderful books and videos on how mushrooms work. And their function in nature is that their mycelium, that we can never see because it's so minuscule, intertwine with plant roots, tree roots, other plant roots, and they provide this communication network from one plant to another. They provide a nutrient transport network, and they are also able to produce compounds that can heal in anything in nature. For example, the mushrooms have been found to grow around nuclear waste areas, Chernobyl, for example. So they tend to grow in very toxic areas, but they also grow in very energetic areas, and they grow in very energetic vortexes. It's often why you see mushroom rings. So the important thing with mushrooms, always choose organic, because any toxicity will be absorbed in that mushroom. But when you're working with highly energetic mushrooms, which we work with, then they have a very interesting function in the body in re-regulating anything that really goes wrong, and providing the body to create these compounds that the body is not really able to produce, in helping to alleviate these conditions. And where probably their most profound effect that has been researched again and again is the effect on viruses, because when you're working inside viruses obviously penetrate inside the cell. Mushrooms have been shown to have a 99% inhibition with HIV, 4% inhibition with hepatitis B. So their effect with viruses is amazing. And even with the early studies post-COVID, the chaga mushroom was shown to be very, very effective with post-COVID symptoms and conditions after that. So there's so much I could talk about with mushrooms. When I've been working with mushrooms for 20 years now anyway. Of course, we had to ferment them and see what was happening during the fermentation. And we're getting much heightened benefits with our fermented lion's mane in particular, but with all of the mushrooms, because the key areas you would always benefit with fermentation is immune health, cognitive health. Kefir comes from the term good feeling. And when you're fermenting those, straight away, you're helping to re-regulate the gut-brain axis. So you always have additional benefits that you're providing with fermentation to the mushroom, as well as them being more concentrated, more bioavailable, and with digestive health. And that is critical for the benefits of mushrooms. They largely work through the digestive tract on many of the actions they have. So fermented mushrooms, I think, is a very interesting future.
I'm sure, and I'm wondering now, when you mentioned the connection between fermentation and the way it enhances the power of the mushroom and sends the information to the brains, how would something like psilocybinum psilocybinum work with fermentation?
Well, it's you're asking the questions that I began to ask myself, and these are really interesting areas. So
I did not plan to ask these questions. They just somehow intuitively came up in my mind.
Well, it may be that some of the listeners have been working in this areas, and you might get some interesting feedback. I'm experimenting with a few interesting areas that are illegal. Fermenting mistletoe, that it has some interesting research with cancer, which we cannot sell mistletoe, but I'm still fermenting that. I'm currently experimenting with fermenting hemps and see what that does with CBD content, and with psilocybin. That's one that I haven't got around to, but now you've asked the question, the next time we speak, I'm going to have a plan in place to see how that affects psilocybin with the fermenting of mushrooms there. This isn't it amazing that we can create these activated compounds simply through fermentation, which you or any listener could do themselves, and see what happens. But it's an unknown. What we tend to find with fermentation, if you're doing it properly and you're not introducing molds or pathogens, is every food that I've worked with is always safe and tends to be benefited from it. So we're working with a very safe method of food processing, if you like.
Graham, thank you so much for all the useful and valuable information you offered us. I would be very curious to find out more about everything, but I think we should stick to the hour we talked about. Thank you. Your products are available in Romania through Botanic. Very soon, I do know that we will have also the symbiotic.
Yes,
I can't wait to try that.
I can't wait for the feedback. I'm really excited by that. Thank you so much for your interest.
Right now I'm taking maca and the probiotics. I think it's the terrain, yes, or the one with artichoke. It's the
Regenesis.
Or Regenesis. I'm not sure. I have to look. But now you told me that I need to take some more. I was only having one capsule in the morning, so I think it's a little bit. I should have some more.
Always start with one. Everyone has different thresholds on how they benefit from foods. We know that with take coffee, for example. One espresso may be enough. Some people need more. So start with one and increase and find your sweet spot. You're very safe to increase, and you will have what really works for you. And what I like about these is when you find the right combination, the right amount, it really is like now you have a partner with a herb. Now you have a herb that you're partnered with, and that is going to provide you benefits for as long as you wish to take it. And you don't ever get a die-off of effects. These aren't isolated and concentrated that you tend to need to come off it after a while because the body gets used to it. This isn't a case where the body gets used to it. The body has now got a partner that it will work with for as long as you wish to take it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now I will switch a little bit to Romanian to end the discussion. Așadar, dragii mei, aceasta a fost întâlnirea din această seară cu Graham Botfield, fondatorul brandului Living Nutrition, un brand de suplimente bazate pe fermentație, suplimente absolut minunate pe care vă recomand să le încercați pentru că o să vedeți câte beneficii vă pot aduce pentru sănătate. Ca de obicei, la final de întâlnire vă invit să nu uitați să lăsați un like, un comentariu, un share și un save pentru a revedea mai târziu acest live, această discuție în cazul în care nu ați apucat să o urmăriți până la final și desigur să o dați mai departe ca să ajungă la cât mai multe persoane. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult pentru atenție și ne vedem data viitoare la o nouă întâlnire din seria Talks. Thank you once again, Graham. It was a pleasure and I'm looking forward to walking the red carpet to Living Nutrition.
It's such a pleasure to meet you and thank you. Thank you again.